Hey everyone, today I'm going to go over replacing the gear on the automatic windows or power windows on a 90 Ford F-250. There's a couple of little tricks I learned in there in the process of doing it, and I thought I'd share it. I had taken this to the shop and I asked them to quote me, and they said $360 to do both doors, and I think that's probably a pretty good fair estimate. I already had the parts, so it probably would have been a little bit more with the parts, but the way I see it is, if you got the time to do it, for that much money, yeah, I'll take the $400. Anyway, and it's kind of fun working on stuff, but this is not one of the funner jobs to do on a truck. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you got to do is get the door panel off. I got the door panel here, sitting outside the truck. That's the upper panel, and this is the lower panel here. And pretty good idea to keep track of the screws, obviously. I mean, I shouldn't have to tell you that. If you don't know that about losing screws, then you probably want to pay somebody to do this. But anyway, one of the big bummers on there is they put this plastic over the door underneath the panel, and you really need that in there. It keeps a lot of sound out, a lot of draft. And the way that they glue it on, there's just no way to get it back off of there easily without tearing it. So I'm going to be taping this all back up. So I did note that you can get the door panel off with the handle still in place, but it's pretty easy to remove that. So if you got a net driver, just reach in there and pull that off. So, and then probably the first thing you're going to want to do is remove the speaker. If you have a stock speaker up there, because that's where you're going to be able to get the motor out of. This also, the controller mounts to the door, and there's just 3 screws that hold it onto the door. So there's 3 holes, and you can see there's one, and there's the other one, and then there's one over on that side there, right behind the blue wire. Anyway, it's just 3 screws, so you just want to keep those. And once you remove those, you remove them from they come in from this side. So the head of the screw will be here. So you're gonna take those out after you've removed the door panel. Just be careful and don't break off, because there's a lot of plastic parts in there. Just pull that off. Now the next thing that you got to do, and this is such a bummer, I was trying to be really careful. Oh, I've got a good drill and bit here. It's a titanium center point bit, and what they've done, and this is just the dumbest thing, is they've put basically these little divots right here and then here on the panel, and you're meant to center up on those divots and then drill them out to the size you need, so that you can get a nut driver in there to remove the machine screws that are mounting the motor to the door panel. So it just, I don't know why you wouldn't just leave those holes open and have a plastic grommet in it. But anyway, as I say, the big bummer was that as careful as I was, as soon as you get going through there, it just grabs and throws that bit in there, and then it gets all twisted up. So much for having a nice clean look there. Would have been a lot easier in the factory. The other thing is, if you're using if you're not using a 1/4-inch drive with a swivel on it, you're going to have to drill out a small portion of the metal here on the door because you can't get straight into the screw without doing that. So that was kind of a pain too. And anyway, it's all disconnected now. This is the connection for the motor, and the other one that flopped down in here was that's for the speaker. Those are pretty easy to get off. But anyway, once you drill those out, then you can get in there with a nut driver and pull it out. You're not going to get this motor out of there without drilling those holes. So, hopefully you'll have better luck drilling it than I did. If you do jolt through and run into the back of the motor, there's a plate here that the motor actually is screwed to, so you're not really going to damage anything, so that's the good thing. There's no way you're getting out of this without dropping those screws in the door, so good luck with that. Make sure you got a magnet and a mirror to get them. There's fortunately only 3 of them. Okay, let's go take a look at the motor. Okay, so you can see that this was the driver's side motor, and the motors tend to be pretty good. They don't, I don't know, maybe they do go bad. I'm sure they would if they got soaked or something, but it seems that they kind of knew in advance when they were designing this that the thing that was going to go bad, well, they had to make a weak link somewhere, so they made these gears out of plastic. And you would think that what was happening when you're running the motor and the window is not going up or down is that the problem would be these gears would strip off. Well, in fact, that's pretty rare. But the new kit is going to come with that plastic gear and then this metal gear, which actually sets inside of it. And then you've got these little plastic pieces. You go, what in the world is that for? Well, they're pretty important, as it turns out. Now, those are kind of like the weak link. If you ever work on an outboard motor, you have a shear pin in there that's meant to bust off so you don't bend the crankshaft if you hit something with the prop. This is kind of the same principle. And then there's a very small O-ring. It's basically a keeper ring, and it slides on the shaft to hold all of this together. So there is a difference between the passenger side and the driver's side on this, and the only difference is this gasket. And they look, as you can see, they look almost identical. But what happens is, if you were to try to put this on and you get everything lined up, it doesn't line up with the screw hole at the top. It would if it were flipped over this way, but then it would be backwards. That's the difference between these two set of replacement parts on this. So anyway, so what happens here is, you can see, that sits in here. You take these pieces, these little plastic guys, and they go in these 3 corners, and then you put this on and it locks that in place to keep it from turning. Otherwise it'll just jump around on you and it'll never actually turn the window. Then this goes in on the shaft and you pop your little keeper ring in, and that's it. Now getting it back together, that's going to be the fun part. Also, it should come with a bag of lithium grease, and I think it's important to use what they give you, because I think it probably has a lot to do with not rotting the plastic. That said, yeah, I got a can of WD-40 here. That's not for this project. I wouldn't want to use WD-40 on this stuff. I love WD-40. I use it for everything. but you probably wouldn't want that on the gears. It's likely to eat it up. Alright, so let's pop this thing back together. So as I said, there's no way you're getting through this without losing the 3 screws that mount the motor into the door. So I just want to show you, I got them out really fast and easy, but if I didn't have my little magnet tool here, I would have been screwed. But I'll just show you. I mean, like I said, you're going to drop it, down it goes for sure. But if you got one of these, you just get in there and go fishing, and there it is, just like that. So if you're like me, the first thing you're going to want to do is test it, make sure the whole darn thing works. So here we go, the moment of truth. Hey! And the window goes down, and the window goes up. Nice. Now there's a little slide right here. You can kind of see, obviously this truck sat for a while, but that slide is what keeps all of the tension, that and then the window guides off of that, those 3 little plastic pieces that I showed you. So if we want to keep those from shearing off, what you're going to have to do is grease that up real good and make sure that the window tracks themselves and they're inside as well are nice and clean and well lubricated. Otherwise you're just going to run into the same problem again and again and again. But anyway, I'm just thrilled to be able to have them working. So now for putting this mess back together, and then the other side, a little bit of black duct tape to patch up the plastic. As I said, it's kind of an important feature, and I've greased up the slides and the window guides and the little slide underneath the window. So that motor ought to go for, well, hopefully another 20 years or so. Hey, you do got to give them a little bit of credit. They lasted quite a long time. And the only reason that they broke in the first place was the truck had been sitting for a long time and the windows had always worked. So I just jumped in there and went to roll them down and put a little bit too much strain on the windows because the basically like lichen had grown on the outside of the window guides. So I cleaned all that up, but it was too late. It had already ground up those little pieces in the gears of the motor. So, all right, panel's back on, and then time to do the other side. All right, so here we are over on the passenger side. I wanted to show you these divots before they'd been drilled out. So there's one right there, and then there's another one here. There's only 3 machine screws on here. They're 5/16 head, by the way, at least on this here. And this is the one I can't figure out. Like, yeah, couldn't they have just made like a little, half circle in this, or just change the way it's laid out just slightly so you could get straight on there? Because these other ones, you drill them out, you're going to go straight onto the head. You just got to make sure that the size of your drill bit you're using is big enough to accommodate the nut driver that you're sending in there. So anyway, there's the other side all set and done. I'm real happy with that. Been driving this thing around with windows that don't roll up for quite a while, so it's good to get it finally done. All right, onward. Okay, some more fun here. I managed to drop the motor down when I pulled the last screw out on the passenger side. So I don't know about you, but I mean, my arms are too big to get through that speaker hole, and I can get them in there, but then it really scraped myself up pretty bad on the other side pulling it out. So I'm really grateful to have one of these little squeezy grabber guys that just goes down there, and I just grab the wires and then pull them up so that I can you know, pull it up by the wires to get the motor back out. Anyway, probably a good idea if you're going to go out this project to have one of those handy. Alright, so nothing like a clean bench, huh? So we'll go ahead and take this thing apart. It's actually only got one keeper screw on it, because the other 3 machine screws here, here, and here hold it against that mounting plate inside the door. So not really that much to it. So we get that little screw off and make sure we don't lose that. And this is kind of pressed on around, you know, here, this screw hole and this one here, but it's not really too hard to get off. I'm not too worried about damaging it either, because I've got another one that I'm going to replace it with. So here you can see there's kind of a little lip here, and so you could just remember, because it'd be easy to get these screwed up if you're replacing both at once and have that lip going the wrong way. That's supposed to be facing in. So there's a curb here, and you want to make sure that that curb is facing towards the gear when you're done. Okay, so then inside of here we got a whole bunch of junk. So you want to grab some paper towels and this and that. You want to get all these, because there's a lot of little bits of plastic and everything else, so it's good to have something to put that on, which I don't, so I'm going to go get it. Alright, I found my paper towels. I'd taken them out to the truck, left them out there, but as you can see, I mean, the grease is probably fine, but there are chunks of the plastic from those little plastic pieces that you meant to put inside behind this guy, behind the pinion gear there. I guess you call it a pinion gear. Anyway, we want to make sure all of that is completely cleaned out, because I don't want a piece getting in there and you know, there's kind of like a screw gear here that spins this outside ring gear, and if I get a piece of plastic in there, I'm afraid, you know, it might bust that up. So I don't want to do that after going through all this kind of trouble. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and pry this out so I can get to what's happening down in here. So there's that gear. There's some more of these. That's the ground up pieces of plastic. And then right in here there's these little holes in them, and you can kind of get a little bit of a grip on the ring to get it out. There's nothing holding it in there. There we go. And on the last one, I got right towards the end of the shaft, and I didn't want to come out because I think the keeper, the little keeper ring was in there, keeper grommet, whatever. But you just give it a little pry and off she goes. All right, so now we got to take it apart. Now time to clean it up, put it back together. Okay, so now we're ready to put this together. Got all the parts laid out. Got my my little screw here for the for putting the gasket cover plate, whatever you want to call it, back on. Got the ring gear here, and these are the three little plastic parts and pinion, if you will, and it also comes with this grease. So There's the inside all cleaned out, ready to go. You can see the screw gear in there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do the nasty part and get that grease in there. The other, so when I first went to replace these parts, they, you know, as I said, there's a driver's side and a passenger side, but the only difference is this gasket plate. And you know, on the new parts, both the Napa and the I had to go to a different store to get the other side. I don't remember which one was which, but they didn't have the other type. But the stock pieces, look, they're black on both sides. You can't really tell which side's supposed to go on. But the remanufactured parts got a different, you know, there's metal on the outside and then there's sort of a gasket material on the inside, so you just know that the metal goes on the outside. Alright, so on with the ring gear. That just slides in there. When you push it down, you're going to get the grease is going to squeeze out a little bit. Alright, I'm going to place these in here. Alright, now I got to get this guy. And this is actually kind of a little bit of a chore because got to get those pieces to sit in just the right spot while you get it rotated. So it'll slip in there. Alright, so I'm pretty sure this was the aftermarket gear kit, whatever, that I purchased, and I gotta say, when I say aftermarket, I mean the one I bought from the discount auto store. The one I bought from Napa went in there with no problem at all. So, you know, that's just a, you know, fairly typical. You're going to do a job, make sure you get quality parts. So the only reason I bought from the discount store was that they just didn't have both sides, and I needed both sides. Alright, so let's see what we can do to get this thing put back together. Right out the bat, it looks a little odd. I know, there it goes. Yep. Lines right up. And when you try to put the wrong side on here, these holes are, you know, these are sleeved, so they have to fit right, you know, in. But the top and the bottom will not line up on the other one. So, you know, just know that when you're doing it, you got to use make sure you're going in the right way, and it's for the passenger side. Yada yada yada. What I ended up having to do to get that gear on there is get all those pins lined up just perfectly and then just whack the gear with a hammer. And then it dropped right in, of course. Hey, you know. The keeper, I decided not to put in because I don't have, the other one was gone, but on this one it was still in the right spot, but you need a very small pointed, you know, something like this to dig it out, and there's just nothing wrong with it, so I'm not going to bother. There's no way for this gear to come out of there when it's bolted on, obviously, so I'm not too worried about it. Alright. Now it's time to put this thing back together. Okay. Tricks for getting this thing back in there. Number one, you gotta have to go through that speaker hole. That's just basically the only way to do it. And I know from taking it out that the motor orientation is basically with the motor down. You're going to need to have access to the wire so that you don't lose it. So also when you get it down there in place, you can feel there's like a sweet spot, and you can feel that it just wants to lock up on the gears when you have it in the right spot. And then you can kind of see through here that you have your holes in the right spot. So okay, I'm going to give it a shot. So right there I have, so where am I there? Right there. I managed to get it in place, and I know that I'm in the right spot because it won't rotate. You know, I gotta tell you, it was a little bit trickier getting the second one in than the first one. But that's the way it is sometimes. Okay, and the first screw, obviously, you want to put in should be the easiest. I have my 5/16 nut driver there. I get that one in, and I know that I'm lined up. The other two are going to go in just fine. Did a little bit better of a job with the holes this time, except for on the on this easy one. I really had to hack at that to get it right. Machine screws, they're ferrous, so if you're using a magnetic tip, they'll stick to it. And I highly recommend you dig around and find a 5/16 driver with a magnetic tip, because it'll make your life a lot easier. In my case, of course, I got stainless, so non-magnetic, and you can put the screw on there and it just falls right off. But what I found was, you take a small piece of this plastic, or I suppose it could be anything, but a small piece of this, and lay it over the top, and then put the screw in it, it manages to hold it pretty good. So that's a nice little trick. Alright, so I got my little piece of plastic holding the screw on there. I'm just going to get it in there. Now this top one is not too difficult, but I'll tell you, the one on the bottom was a total pain in the butt. I must have dropped the darn thing 3 times. The other side trying to get it in. Well, it's all done. I can't tell you, how good it feels when you put in the time, you do the work, and everything works. I just saved $400. And had some fun and worked on my old truck. So, anyway, I hope your projects go as good as this one did for me, and good luck.